Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Brian Vincic, and thanks for your patience. It's a little bit after 1 Pacific time, and we're having a little bit of some technical difficulties having one of the speakers join, so that's why the delay. But I'm going to do my best to kind of fill in gaps here until the speaker does arrive, or one of the speakers. And I want to tell you a little bit about Securematics. One is Securematics has been around for over 20 years. We're a distributor located here in San Diego, California. We specialize really in only the wireless networking security products markets, if you will. Ruckus is one of our flagship lines. We only have really 4 lines, believe it or not. That being Ruckus, Juniper, SonicWall, and Pulse Secure. We've been a Ruckus distributor for just about a little over 4 years now. The other thing is we're a little bit different kind of a distie. We have a dedicated Ruckus team. We actually answer the phone. We're real humans. You can talk to us. We really like to understand a lot about your business, so we can go, a little bit deeper on that, as well as we like to go very deep on the technologies that we sell. We have 3 or 4 SEs that we rely on at Securematics that go very deep in the product lines, and we pride ourselves, since we don't have 10,000 lines, we could really go deep on the 4 lines we do have, and Ruckus obviously being one of those. We sell about 300 million in products, so we're not real small. We're 50 people. We have about $50 million of mixed inventory, and we're not afraid to make investments. So our goal is anytime you place an order, we really want to have the product for you, because we know if you have a bad experience and we don't have the product, then you probably won't come back to us. So I want to make sure that we do, we do have that inventory. So with the dedicated Ruckus team, I don't know if Ruth is able to join yet. Maybe not. No. Okay, I don't hear that.
Wasn't able to.
Okay, so all right, we're gonna wing this one then. So Robbie, why don't you introduce yourself? And I'm not sure if Brian and Kendall are on, but let's kind of go through and do some introductions, if you don't mind, and kind of tell folks what you're focused on, Robbie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Excuse me. Hi, everybody. How's it going? And thanks a lot for joining today. I am Robbie Mattel. I am the Business Development Manager here at Securematics. Ruth Parker is my counterpart. And so we kind of share duties, but we overlap a lot. My role is basically kind of working with the partners at a high level. If you have any project registration needs, if you have anything really just from a higher standpoint with Ruckus, get in touch with vendors, directing you with our sales engineers, any kind of traffic cop stuff that I can do to help grow your business, to help make the transition easier working with Securematics and Ruckus. That's what I primarily focus on. Ruth, basically, she helps out more with the vendor side. She's working with Ruckus a lot closer than specific partners, so to speak. And she works on our marketing stuff. She works with our programs. She helps, create this whole event. I wish she was here so she could help kind of discuss a lot more in detail with that. Yeah. But due to some technical difficulties, I don't know if you want to switch over to slide 4, whoever's running the PowerPoint. But slide 4 is just kind of a layout of our our Securematics team, excuse me. You'll see, let me make it bigger on my side too. So you'll see here, Ruth, myself, and then you see both of our sales directors. So Mitch Wade is the sales director for kind of the Central and West Coast. And then we have Ed Bender, who is the East Coast sales director. You already heard from Brian, who's our general manager. Shelly is our director of finance and operations. So when we need to get creative with financing, when we need to maybe extend out a little bit extra terms, a larger credit line, Shelly's kind of the brain spearheading that operation. And then we have 2 sales engineers now on our team. We have Hannah and Brian Waldrop. Both are fully certified on all of the lines that we sell, but very well versed in the Ruckus line. I work with both of them super closely all day, and I probably wouldn't have a job without them because they save my behind quite often. And then there's Barry listed in purchasing, and then Maroney, who he basically helps on our operations side with our order management team, and then also our quoting team as well. So anytime a Ruckus special pricing comes through, it's Maroney's team that's going to get that taken care of for us. If we go one more slide to number 5, that is just a breakdown of our sales team. So it kind of breaks it down into West, Central, and East. And for those of you who are currently working with Securematics, you already know that you have a dedicated inside sales rep, and that sales rep is kind of your single throat to choke. So anytime you need a quote, you need pricing and availability, you want to run a project through us, you're going to reach out to your inside sales rep. And for those of you currently not working with Securematics, when you set up an account with us, we'll assign you one of those sales reps depending on geographical location. And then basically Ruth and I are just an extension of that sales rep. And along with the sales rep, we're just here to help grow your business and work together collaboratively with Securematics, Ruckus, and yourself. So that's kind of my spiel and where I fit into the puzzle and the rest of the team and whatnot. So from there, I mean, I think we could bring on kind of the guest speaker of the day, who is Jeanette with Ruckus, and I'll pass it on. Thank you for attending.
Hey, thanks, Robbie. Thanks for passing on our covering, I should say. And we do have Jeanette Lee. She's the Senior Director of Solutions Engineering and Technical Marketing at Ruckus. And our topic is really, what's all the bark about? Right, Jeanette?
You bet. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive in here, shall we? So a couple things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Ruckus, the problems we solve, how we solve them. And then I was asked to say a few words on the competitive side, because that is actually part of my particular DNA, because among other things, I am responsible for a lot of competitive testing that we do here at Ruckus as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to just talk about here is the problems, right? Because it's not enough to have stuff to sell, right? Because you have to have people who want to buy what you have. And for that, you have to have a problem that you're solving. And I think we can all really relate to this. Any other time, we would totally relate to it. But I think moreover, in 2020, this has really happened, because we've all seen how things can change just so quickly. And the question has always been, and it continues to be, were we ready for those changes? And our customers have a lot of problems that they work with us, that they trust us to help them solve. And I thought I would talk about and share some of those with you here. One of the ones that I think has come out as really one of the two marquee applications that people have realized they needed to address and urgently address in 2020 has been the digital divide. As people have been unable to go into the office or to send their children to school, they've had to come home and do things that they would have normally done at a school or at home and do it at their house. And that has really shown up the digital divide, the haves and the have-nots when it comes to who has network connectivity and internet access. And when you look at a map of where we have connectivity, it looks pretty good until you realize that most of the population is in these couple areas here, but there are vast swaths in there that are not covered well. Even if you could be in a city that says it has 80%, 90% connectivity, you still have a number of people who will not have connectivity. I'm fortunate enough to live somewhere where I do, but even in my own school district that my son goes to, I know there are still families who do not have adequate access to the internet. And so the school has gone out of its way to help them bridge that digital divide. And that's something that can be addressed. It can be done so much better. And I've been privileged, Ruckus has been privileged to work with our customers and our partners in solving these problems. One example here was where we worked with a Ruckus service provider, NextWave. And the case in point here was a small community in Texas, in East Texas. And when COVID hit, they had the issue of, okay, all the kids are home. Well, internet wasn't a great thing anyway. Nobody had internet service to the curb. There was no cable or cable modems, therefore, no DSL, nothing in that community. What were you going to do? How were these kids going to get their work done? And so what they did is they set up a pavilion that was in that neighborhood so that they could bring the kids in and have them do some socially distanced schoolwork, but also so parents and other people in the community could come in, they could get internet access, and they could do the things that they needed to do. And so that was something they set up. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think your slides are progressing.
Which one are you seeing here?
I'm still seeing the title slide. Can you try to go into presentation mode?
I am in presentation mode. Interesting.
Looks like we are frozen on the first slide.
Nobody else can see the slides?
No, I did have one comment. Oh, looks like it's switching over now.
Yeah, that's.
What's switching over?
It's a white screen now, but it looks like they're loading.
Yeah,
Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties. If it doesn't load in a second, I have your slides also. I can put them up.
Hey, Ben,
Okay.
yeah, why don't you pull them up?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, well, they weren't progressing, Jeanette.
Okay. That's very
Here we
strange.
go.
Looks like there they are.
You're seeing my slides now?
Yes.
Yep. This piece to the
All right.
rescue.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Alrighty then. Well, let's continue here. I'm not sure what was going on with there, but as I was saying, so what we did is we worked with one of our partners, NextWave, to help with this community that needed to get access for their kids and for their families and for themselves in the middle of this ongoing thing with COVID. And what they did is they ended up, as I said, set in this pavilion. And then with the NextWave, who brought in an a WAN connection, they were then able to get it out into people who were in the pavilion using the Ruckus Unleashed access point and a switch. So what was this? In this case, it was the R750, which is our highest capacity 4-stream Wi-Fi 6 802.11ax AP. And then they also had that connected with one of our smaller compact switches. And with this one AP, they were able to give complete coverage within the pavilion and outside. So people who, didn't want to come into the pavilion and maybe preferred to stay outside could even just sit in a chair outside and still get connected and still have high-speed connectivity. The nice thing about this is it was really easy to set up. The SP came in, they set up the WAN, they plugged in the AP and the switch to it, and they were off and running. Now this is a controllerless solution, which just goes to show how easy it can be to set something up like this. With the Unleashed solution, which is our name for our controllerless, you can have an AP that then manages a bunch of other APs and switches. So you just have one thing you set up, and then everything else is good to go. You can push out any updates that need to be done. So that was what they did in that particular case. And we see that a lot. Now, continuing in with this theme here, there's other organizations that we work with. And ITDRC, the Information Technology Disaster Resource Center, of which I'm a volunteer, and we have a number of people at Ruckus who are volunteers, is a volunteer organization of IT professionals. And we go out and we help disaster-struck communities or anyone who basically needs any kind of IT help. Network connectivity is the most common request that we get, or bringing in Chromebooks, for example, for kids whose schools maybe don't have enough equipment when they're trying to deal with other things going on, like something like a COVID or a flood or a hurricane. So they came to us and they said, we have an issue where we have a city that is trying to set up these in-community COVID testing stations, and they're just pop-ups, right? And in this case, you can see it was in a soccer field. Well, there's no internet connection there. What are they going to do? How are they going to get it all set up? So we were able to take that similar solution to what I talked about before, and we can duplicate it here as well. So you can have these pop-up, if you will, these testing, or, I'm using COVID as an example here, but obviously there's a lot of other things that go on where you could need this kind of connectivity, something really quick, something agile that can still give you the kind of reliable connectivity that people absolutely need in these kinds of situations. It's hard enough as it is dealing with everything else going on here, but then to add on connectivity problems on top of it, or having everybody have to, share somebody, tethered to somebody's device, just doesn't cut it. And in this case, the one I was just talking about here, it was also unleashed, but in this one, they used our T710, which is an outdoor access point. The Unleashed software is pretty neat in that it runs across any Ruckus AP. I also like it a lot for these kinds of situations because it has the advantage of price, because people always want to know what the price is. Well, in this case, you buy the AP, and of course, like I said, lots of different APs, different sizes, price points, and all that sort of thing. The cost for Unleashed is free. We do not charge for this software. You can take it, you can use it to manage, like I said, all the APs in a site or the switches, all for one price. You can have an app in your hand. It just doesn't really get much easier than that, to be quite honest.
Hey, Jeanette, I'm going to stop you again for a second, just because I want to see if we're having issues with the slides again. I think you're should be on slide 6 or 7, 8.
I just moved to 9, slide 9.
You just moved to 9? Okay. So Bailey, can you catch us up?
I'm gonna go ahead and load the slides, Jeanette, and I'll just advance them for you.
Yeah, just let her know when you need to advance. Sorry about that for interrupting you guys, but
no worries.
Thanks, Doug. All right, can you see that slide on mine? Should be CBRS a game changer?
Yep,
I
do.
Let me know
absolutely
when I can advance.
All right,
ahead,
2020 is nothing if not a challenging year in so many ways. So that's exactly what I've been talking about. Yeah. So going back to what I was talking about here with the, things like things changing quickly, right? And you need to think on your feet. You need to react quickly. You need to help your customers. Or if you're a managed service provider, you need to react very quickly. Something else that has really been starting to get a lot of momentum in the last year or so has been CBRS, Citizens Band Radio Service. And what is this? This is LTE. It's a cellular technology, but the thing that sets it apart from something like your 5G or 4G or anything like that is this is something that an actual enterprise or an organization on their own could set up for themselves. What does that mean? It means that private LTE becomes a real reality. You could have your own LTE network set up with your own SIM cards so that only devices with your SIMs can get onto that network. And of course, because it's cellular, it's a lot less subject to things like interference, of course, but also it has a lot lower latency too, and the connectivity. So when you have applications, maybe robotics or some kind of industrial connectivity where you really need that very, very low latency, this could be a great option. Or even, as I have here, when you need some private and secure communications, something that's quick and easy to set up, CBRS is really something that a lot of organizations are taking a look at. I know that most of the service providers that Ruckus that we work with here are looking at it if they haven't already trialed it and possibly even rolled it out here. But it's the kind of thing that makes a lot of sense, because when you talk about connectivity, it isn't just Wi-Fi and it isn't just wired. There's a lot of options out there. And the whole point of having all these options is being able to have the right thing to solve the problem that you have, right? I don't want to give you something that maybe could solve your problem, but it won't solve it effectively and it won't do it well. So this is just another, CBRS becomes another arrow in the quiver, if you will. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So other things, I talked about communities and the challenges there. And I wanted to take a moment and just talk about something else that people were doing. And this comes back to kind of similar to that Texas community that I was talking about where again, people are trying to figure out how do we get this connectivity to people. And another very common thing has been to use school grounds. The kids in many places are not going back to the school, at least not into classrooms, but that doesn't mean they can't go back to school. And by that, I mean sitting out in a parking lot, for example, if that's the only way they have to get connected. Many libraries are doing things like this. I know that there have been states where the library systems across the entire state have had initiatives to instigate Wi-Fi into their parking lots for their communities if they need to get access. And this is, again, going back to that whole thing of what do we need to do? The goal is we want to have connectivity. The question is, how do I solve that problem in the most effective way for these people and solve it in a way that's realistic to purchase and to deploy? And let's go to the next slide here. And as I said here, this just goes to show, right, how you can actually do something like that. In cases where schools may have Wi-Fi inside, if they don't have anything outside, they need to put some of those those outdoor APs on the outside of the school. And you can see that picture on the right-hand side. There's actually somebody installing one of our outdoor APs. So all you have to do is just make sure it's getting out into the parking lot, and then people can do their socially distanced web surfing, classwork, whatever they need to do. Next slide, please. And as I said, 2020 has been a year of challenges. And I talked about solving problems, and many things have happened this year that frankly we did not expect or anticipate. And yet you still have to react to them, and you still have to help people. And that's important. It's something that we really feel is something that we should always be considering when we build products here at Ruckus, is how do we help people solve the problems they have today, but also position you so that you can solve the problems that you don't even know are going to occur yet. And this is an example of a school bus that, as you can see, has an AP sticking out of the window. That's solving another kind of problem. Let's go to the next slide on this one, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Because what is a school bus, right? A school bus is a way of getting kids to school, but it's also something, you look at it as a mobile piece of school property. And if you look at it that way, and you look at the problems we're trying to solve that we've been talking about here, the school, let's go to the next slide, can be transformed. And how it gets transformed is, not only is it a mobile piece of school property, it can be a mobile piece of the school network. And the way you would do that is, again, having that compact ICX switch I talked about for your wired connectivity, printers maybe, or something like that, or even a server could be on the school bus. You would have an outdoor AP. You saw that picture where we had a T610 that was hanging out of the school bus window. And then in this case, because of course, this bus is going all over the place, it's going into the neighborhoods. In this case, you do need LTE backhaul. And this one is the M510, which is a Ruckus indoor AP, which then also has a cellular backhaul. So you could have people connecting either directly to that AP, go over the cellular backhaul, or you could have them connecting to that outdoor AP, which would then go through and eventually up to the LTE backhaul. This has the advantage of using school assets like school buses, which are expensive and take up a lot of space, and be able to use it to actually get the internet connectivity, to get access out to the kids where they are. Because not everybody has the luxury of being able to jump in a car in the middle of the day and drive their kids to a school, for example, so they can get their classwork done, but it still has to be done. So why not take those school buses and drive them to the neighborhoods? So this is yet another way of looking at this. And I love this all because it's taking a problem and saying, what is the best way? What's a creative way that we could solve this issue? Next slide, please. So what I've talked about, as I said, has been problems. And we are all in this together. And there's no reason why we can't solve these problems together. Next slide. Actually, it's not the next slide, but it's the part down the other. The question is, can we solve problems for you, our customers? That's okay. You're fine. You can go. Can we solve problems for you? and by you, I'm talking about our partners. And in particular, if you're a managed service provider, some kind of service provider, ISP, WISP, whatever, can I help you solve your problems? And what are the problems that most MSPs find that they have? And this applies to any actually XSP, right? Even our largest service providers that Ruckus supports, like a Comcast or a Charter or somebody like that, they have these problems too. So this is not by size or business. This is really, what do you need to do? And the three big problems that you will find are lack of insight, truck rolls to remote sites, and unplanned OpEx. What does this mean? If you are managing somebody else's network and there's a problem, you need to have insight into what's happening there in order to solve the problem. If you don't have insight, then you get to the next box there, which is truck rolls to remote sites, because there's no other way to troubleshoot at that point. You have to send somebody out, which takes time. So it adds time to that mean time to resolve. It costs money, and all of it contributes to that last thing on the right, which is unplanned OpEx. And that cuts into profit margins. It detracts from resources that could be used elsewhere. The whole thing is not a pretty picture. So go ahead and give us a click here. So how can we help you with that? One more, there we go. And the way we can help you is with some of the things I've been talking about all along here, and I'm going to go into it in a little more detail here in just a moment. But for our service providers in particular, they've found that the way we have this architected has been very helpful for them. For them, having things cloud-based is very helpful because it gives you that agility, that nimbleness, being able to offer that as a service to your own customers. So you can offer Wi-Fi as a service, or switching as a service, network intelligence. These are all things that need to be done, but also more importantly, they help resolve those three things at the top there. Because if you can get deep, granular data about what's happening on your network, you have the insight. And if you have the troubleshooting tools remotely available, then you don't have to send somebody on site. And all these can help to lower that total cost of ownership by reducing any unplanned OpEx that might happen. All this is extremely important. It's extremely helpful. And as I've said, we have a lot of our service providers we work with, from very small to very large. This is their life. And I'm sure for many of you, this is too. Let's go ahead and next. And if you are a managed service provider, then you may want to check out our cloud offering here. We do have an MSP version of this, so you can offer this branded for your own customers. It's hosted by us, it's supported by us. We'll always be there to support you as you support your own customers. Next, please. Now, there are other products that we have as well that we use to help you guys with what you need to do. Another thing that either customers or our MSPs have made use of is the Ruckus CloudPath product. So this is an enrollment and onboarding piece of software here that you can use to take devices and get them enrolled, configured, set up, and get them onto a wireless network very quickly. Now, why do I talk about that when I'm talking about managed services? I talk about that in this context because here's that other issue that also often requires people, right? Which is somebody comes in, they've got a new device, they want to get it connected, and they're having trouble doing so. Why? Is it because it was misconfigured? Is there something else happening? A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, if that device is never connected to the network before and it isn't connecting now, chances are it's misconfigured. And the only way to figure that out is going to be to take it to some IT person and have them physically take the device and look at it. And that can be extremely time consuming for your IT people. Also, it may not even be an option if you have all of your IT support staff off site. So now you don't even have it. There literally is no desk that they could take it to and put it down and have somebody pick it up and look at it. Or you might even have somebody who shows up with some device that IT's never seen before. So they don't even really know what the right way or the best way is to set it up. So with CloudPath, we take a lot of that guesswork out of it. I like to say that CloudPath it's really your IT guy in a box, because it allows somebody to get their device onboarded, configured correctly onto a network by themselves. So it's a self-service where it will walk them through, take their credentials, and wrap everything up, install any certificates, anything else that needs to be done, configure the right SSID name, the right security settings, check everything out, make sure it works, their device is set up, and then they'll move that device over onto that new secure network all automatically. So you don't have to worry about any kind of misconfigurations coming into play there. It's extremely helpful, not just for MSPs. Obviously, we have a lot of customers who use this software too. And a lot of universities, for example. I mean, just think about it. If any of you have been to any kind of university or college on the first day of school, what do you see? You walk out onto the green belt in this university, and you're going to see these IT tables with long lines of kids waiting in order to talk to that IT person to get their device on the network. Wouldn't it be so much easier if they could just hang out and get their devices onboarded themselves? Frankly, it's what most of them would rather do anyway. Next, please. Another thing, and this is also, again, you could be an MSP, in which case this is something that you probably are already doing, but even if you're not, and it's one of your end customers, APIs are extremely common now. People are doing a lot more with it. You see organizations that will often have some kind of DevOps or someone get dedicated to doing some kind of integration on their own. But you also have people, and I'm sure many of you here on this call do this, where you can do bespoke API automation or what have you for your own customers. And Ruckus has some very rich API support. We support a number of different protocols. And the goal here is to give people very flexible, granular access to different aspects of their network environment, which would aid them in visibility, in automation, and in management. Next, please. And then I talked about the visibility and how you might need to understand what's going on in your network. This is a huge thing. A lot of people are talking about this now in terms of analytics, or what I like to think of is as service assurance, because it's not even enough to say that the network is really reliable. We want to make sure that not only is it reliable and not only is it up, but if there is a problem, I want to know about it and want to know about it quickly. But here's the thing. By the time IT finds out about a problem, there's a very good chance that it's already resolved itself, or it may be a problem and that somebody hasn't even told them about, right? So there's a lot happening in your network that you may or may not be aware of that's occurring. And that's why, in a lot of sense, the future or the problem that somebody calls you about already happened. And it happened days ago, maybe. It happened, you could have people calling help desk going, well, last week I had this problem, right? Well, how do you troubleshoot a problem like that? Because at this point it's gone, hopefully, right? But it might come back because you don't know why it occurred. And if you don't know why it occurred, you know, it's like history is doomed to repeat itself, right? It'll probably happen sometime in the future. So how do you deal with that? Well, we built Ruckus Analytics. It's a cloud-based service that's designed to do analytics and service assurance. What it does is it uses machine learning and AI technologies to keep a very close watch on what's happening on the network. You can set your own SLAs. And then at that point, the network will be monitoring what's happening across the network. If it sees a problem, it will not only notify you, but it will also do a severity classification of that problem. Now, why is that important? It's not enough to just be told, hey, there's a problem, right? Most systems, you can log into their management UI and it'll say, oh, hey, there's something that's red here, something that's orange here, something that's yellow here. The question is, how urgent is it? Because there's always something going on in the network. By classifying things as a P1, P2, 3, or 4, the system actually gives you a hint as to how hard this is or how big a deal it is. So you might log into the system and say, oh, well, there's, you know, here's 2 P4s over here. I should probably take a look at those, but oh, there's a P2. So I should spend my time on the P2 first, then go and take a look and see what these P4s are all about. They might only be one client, not impacting a larger piece of the network like a P2 would. So that's an example of where that security classification can really help. The other thing is, of course, you want to be able to have guidance when it comes to troubleshooting too. And so we have that in part of Ruckus Analytics as well, where you could actually go in there and the system will tell you, well, we believe that this issue here is caused by this. And we would recommend that you do this as a best practice. So that's available in there as well. It's all part of Ruckus Analytics. And the whole point here is helping people to manage their network and keep it running as well as possible at all times. Extremely important. Next, please. So I've been talking about bits and pieces here. So here is my lovely slide that will give you guys a very high level overview of the Ruckus products. As I talked about some of our software, I talked about the service assurance with Ruckus Analytics. We also have a reporting software called SCI, the Cloud Path Enrollment System, for securely onboarding devices and applying policy. We have location tracking software. And then on the management side of things, I also touched on this a bit. I talked about Unleashed, Ruckus Unleashed, which is a way of having controllerless management of your wired and wireless. But if you don't want to use that, there are many other options like cloud, for example. Many people like cloud. Or if you like an actual appliance, you could have a physical appliance or a virtual appliance with our Smart Zone controllers. We even have an IoT controller too, and many, many switches. And let's go to the next, please. I'll give you a little bit deeper dive on that one. I talked about the APs and I talked about how we have a lot of different options. And this is really important because when you are looking at different kinds of applications, the same AP is not necessarily going to be the right solution, or I should say the best solution, right? Because if you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere in a field helping with some kind of pop-up COVID testing, as an example, you probably don't want to lug along a wall plate access point because there's literally no wall to connect it to out there. You would probably rather have something like that M510 that I talked about with a cellular backhaul, or maybe an outdoor AP that's hardened. So that's an example where having the right access point at the right price point makes this a much more compelling solution and something that your customers can make better use of. And we have one of the broadest, if not the broadest, AP portfolio on the market. And that includes not only our M510, which I talked about, our indoor APs, our outdoor APs, as well as we even have a wall jack that accepts coax into it as well. And then we also talked about the CBRS too. Next, please. And then I mentioned the switching too. And for those of you who are familiar with it, our ICX switching product line is great. It allows you to start from a very small compact switch and scale all the way up to an aggregation data center core switch as well, very easily, very flexible, gives you a lot of options. And again, that's what it comes down to. If you're kind of hearing a theme here as I'm walking through this of reliability, scalability, flexibility, yeah, absolutely. That's what Ruckus is all about. That's what we're all about when we're going out there and helping you and your customers solve these problems. Next, please. I mentioned IoT, and I thought I would take a moment just to talk about this because it's really popping up everywhere in different ways. And yet the way people approach it, I find, has been very piecemeal, because what is the problem here? The problem is that IoT is, of course, a thing. It's a big thing. And if you're going to do IoT, that means sensors. And it's not a matter of just having one or two sensors. If you're building an IoT network, you're going to have hundreds of sensors, maybe thousands of sensors, depending on the device type that you're deploying out there. But the big question is going to be, what are you going to do with that data and how are you going to get it back? Because all these different IoT systems, they have their own hubs, they have their own way of talking. And if you want to have, for example, two different IoT systems working together, how do you do that? So with the IoT suite from Ruckus, we've actually given you a solution to that. The IoT controller is able to sit on a virtual machine, for example. It's just a very lightweight piece of software, and you can use it to go out there and then talk to the IoT devices. You can monitor them, you can manage them, all from a single pane of glass. But more importantly, going back to that example I gave of two different systems, it also has the ability to set triggers. So it's kind of, think of it as an if this, then that kind of approach to IoT. You could have, for example, a water sensor in the bathroom, maybe at the office. And if the water sensor goes off because there's a leak in the bathroom, then maybe it sends out an alert, sends a page, text message of some sort. That could be one example where you could have the data you get from one sensor triggering something else. Or another example could be if you have, for example, a sensor that notes when a door opens. And if the door opens at 2 a.m., for example, turn on the camera so we can see who just came in or left that door. So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. There's so many things you can do with IoT. And really, in my mind, it comes down to what can you do, but also what can you do with that data and how can you get all these systems to work together? Because it works best. IoT always works best when it's working together. And of course, if you're using our APs, then that has the advantage of the fact that you can use our APs as your IoT connectivity points. So for example, I talked about how all the different IoT systems have different hubs, different ways of communicating. Well, if you get rid of those and you have the IoT suite as the central place to monitor and manage and configure these systems, how do they, given that they're probably BLE or LoRa or something like that, how are they connecting? And the way they can do it is wherever you've got a Ruckus AP, you can have an IoT radio as well. So they can connect to that, ride the common backhaul, which is the cabling, to your AP and back to the controller. Really neat way of solving some problems. And I think a lot of people are starting to find out that this is really pretty complicated, but with IoT Suite, it's pretty simple. Next, please. And that is the big overview for us and what we try to do, right? Our vision is we want to be the place that you can come to for your needs as a solution provider. We want to be able to transform networks, and we want to be able to give people a way to deploy networks and to solve problems that maybe they didn't think were going to be that big a problem before, but now they have to deal with it. And when you have to deal with something quickly, you're always going to reach for the best possible solution. And we like to think at Ruckus that that would be us. Because at the end of the day, we're always looking at three things that we want our products to be. We want them to be simple, and that involves both our products themselves, but also you doing business with us. We want them to be reliable. We want to be able to deploy things and know that it's just going to work. And of course, adaptable, which I talked about at the very beginning, right? Talking about how things change so quickly. And can you be nimble enough, agile enough, adaptable enough to rise to these new challenges and to meet those needs that are emerging? All of this, in my mind, is what it means to work for Ruckus. Next, please. And our customers agree, by the way. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Ruckus, I thought I would just include this. This is something that Gartner does. It's called a Peer Insights, Customer's Choice. This isn't Gartner going out and deciding, you know, hey, you're great, you're not so great, we like this, we don't like this. This is not the analyst. This is the Gartner's own customers coming to them and giving feedback. So these are people who have purchased Ruckus gear or other companies' gear. This is their feedback. And as you can see, Ruckus does really well. That's why one of the things you'll hear over and over and over again, at least I do, when I talk to people who are Ruckus customers or Ruckus partners, and I ask them, why Ruckus? What do you like about us? And the first thing they almost always say is, it just works. And for me, that's the highest compliment I could possibly get. Next, please. Okay, so I promised there'd be a little bit of competitive here too. So let's dive into that. On to the next slide. When we do testing and we do competitive, not only just performance, but also competitive performance testing, we do it in a lab that's based here in Sunnyvale. And I thought I would include a few pictures for you guys if you haven't seen a setup like this. The intent here is we are only interested in doing real world testing. Of course, engineering has giant RF chambers that you could walk into and lay down and sleep in. So we certainly have all of that on the engineering side. But when I do performance testing, I'm interested in what you and your customers are going to see. I'm not interested in the theoretical, this is what I could probably get out of a connection. I'm interested in what will I see with real devices running real applications in my network. And for us, this is a large office building where we have it set up across different kinds of configurations. We can have classrooms, we can have, you know, APs and devices across the building, with cubicles and desks and so on. So this is the kind of testing that we do. And not only do I do it because A, I always love to see how well our stuff perform, but B, I do it because I want to be able to tell you and our field when they talk to you, yes, we have actually tested this stuff. We have tried it out. We've done it in something similar to one of your environments, and we know that it works. And that's what this is all about for me at the end of the day, is having that assurance that everything we're doing what we said we would do. Next, please. So how do we stack up? I was asked to pick on Extreme in this particular call, so that's going to be who I'm going to be talking about for the most part here. So let's next, please. So of course, everybody here, I've been told, will be familiar with Extreme. And I think the thing that I find hard sometimes to talk about with Extreme is that you have to be very specific about which product you're talking about, because there are so many out there. I mean, obviously they have their own hardware, but they also have Enterasys, Zebra, Motorola, Aerohive. They even have some Brocade. Some of the old Brocade switches are there as well. And that poses its own challenges. I mean, yes, you could also say, hey, well, they've got something for everybody. Yes and no, because yes, they have a lot of different solutions and the portfolio can look very broad. But on the other hand, there's really only one or two that are really going to get the R&D dollars to continue on. And while it's always good to support customers with older gear, at some point you have to switch to something new. And I think that's been a challenge for them and will continue to be a challenge as they try and consolidate everything under a single umbrella product portfolio. Next, please. Yep, there we go. So now I talked about, of course, doing performance testing. And this is some data that I wanted to share from you from a test that we did. I like this one because it was independently validated. It's testing that we did in conjunction with a third party, Divergent Dynamics, where we wanted to go out and go head to head with our product. In this case, it was the R610, which is a mid-range access point, and test it against the rest of the crop out there and see how we did. And we did this, again, not just doing like raw throughput from an iPerf or a Chariot or something like that. We wanted to use actual applications. In this case, what we were doing is we were doing streaming video to a bunch of Chromebooks. So kind of, we were basically duplicating a very common scenario in many schools that are out there. And we wanted to see what would happen with the other APs. Would they be able to support, in this case, all 60 video streams without stalls? Would they stall? And if they did manage to get things working, what would happen if we actually put in a heavy load on the network? We initiated a big data transfer or something like that going on, maybe in the room next door. Would everybody continue to be able to support that streaming video? And as you can see here, the answer was no, which kind of surprised me to a certain degree. I honestly did not think that any of the APs would not be able to support at least the video, which is those blue ones there, the video before any data load. But even that, as you can see, many of the access points struggled with that. And why is that? They struggle because not all companies are going to be RF experts. Not everybody is all about performance. Of course, there are a lot of vendors out there. They all have things that are their sweet spot that they're very good at. And the thing that Ruckus really stands head and shoulders above everybody else is in our hardware and our software and how we architect for engineer for performance and success for our customers. Next slide. Then there's a lot of different ways that this can really come out here. One of the ways is through absolute throughput, like I was talking about there, number of stalls, the actual data through it. But another thing that's really important is also what happens to the clients, because it's not enough to just say, well, we pass 800 megabits per second or some, throughput of aggregate throughput. You also have to pay attention to what happened with each client. Were they all able to transmit and transmit roughly equally? And that's called airtime fairness. Most vendors will tell you they support airtime fairness, but whether they actually do it is quite another thing. And I do recognize that not everybody has the tools to be able to do this kind of testing, which quite honestly is why I do it. Because I know that you don't always have the time or the tools to do this, or maybe even sometimes the expertise in know-how in how to set up all this kind of environment. So I do it for you. It's part of what we do as a service, if you will, for every Ruckus partner and for our distributors like our fantastic host today, Securematics. Next, please. So I talked about this and I showed you that we can do really, really well. The next question you might ask is, well, why is Ruckus Wi-Fi so good? You say you're really good, but where and how exactly is that happening? Let's go next. Talk about this just a little bit here. So when it comes to the great Wi-Fi, there's a lot of different things that have to go into this. In a lot of ways, I think Wi-Fi has become one of those technologies that really gets taken for granted until it isn't, right? Everyone assumes that it's going to be great until suddenly stuff stops working, and then you have to figure out exactly what happened. There's a lot of technologies we use. Beamflex is probably one of the ones that most people know us for, which is our adaptive antenna arrays, where we have these antennas. They're basically directional antennas, arrays of directional antennas. And what happens is whenever I'm talking to a particular device, I will only use the antennas that would give me a directional signal to that device. The idea being that I can go further with a stronger signal with a directional antenna than with an Omni. I still get all the functionality of an Omni because when I'm not talking to that particular client, I'm listening on an Omni RF pattern, if you will. But when I'm talking to a device, I give them the best possible performance that I can at that moment. Channelfly is another software technique that we use. So where Beamflex is primarily hardware, Channelfly is software in that it's more than just a background scanning when it comes to figuring out the best channel. With Channelfly, we're actually going to go onto each channel and spend time there so that we get real statistics and real information about the performance on that channel, rather than just taking a 1-second glimpse at all the channels and then trying to make a decision based on that. It means that not only are we making the best channel selection from an interference point of view, but we're also doing it based on what we measured as potential throughput. Because you could actually have a channel that maybe has almost no interference, but the throughput is not very good for whatever reason. That would not be the right channel to pick if you had a choice between that and maybe another channel that had a little more interference, but a much higher throughput. So this is the kind of intelligence that we build into all of our access points. And of course, there's other features and connectivity out there. Some of these are part of standards like multi-user MIMO, for example, or maybe, excuse me, or roaming as well. These are all things that are standards, but we build on top of them. So for us, it's never a matter of, well, I'm just going to go with the standard. The standard does this, that's good enough, right? So for example, let me take roaming as an example. Of course, there are standards out there, 802.11k, R, and V. These are all intended to help with the clients that maybe aren't so good at roaming, which would be many of them, as I'm sure you've all experienced. But we kind of looked at this and our engineers said, well, but that doesn't solve every problem. And especially it doesn't help clients who maybe don't support these newer standards with the roaming. So how can we help them? And smart roaming was our approach to doing this, which is device agnostic and will support anything, regardless of what standard they support. Because basically what will happen is we'll be looking at that device, and if we see that it is now closer to another AP where it could have a much better connectivity experience, we can actually bounce it so that it'll come back and reconnect to that newer, closer, stronger one and be as aggressive or as little aggressive, if that's a word there, a phrase, as you would need based on your own particular environment and what you're trying to do. So that's just an example. Or another great one is smart mesh. Very simple. Mesh technology can be really helpful and beneficial when you need to get connectivity across large areas where you maybe don't have wired connectivity. And if you don't have a wire, what are you going to do? Well, in that case, really your only option is going to be to do wireless backhaul, which is either through a point-to-point or point-to-multi-point bridge, or it's going to be through meshing between two APs. Smart Mesh, which is a Ruckus technology, basically takes the guesswork out of the meshing, and you can enable it on any network with one click. So that goes back to what I had in my previous slide, where I talked about ease of use and simplicity. We want this to be easy. We want this to be a no-brainer and something that you don't have to think about too hard, that you don't have to send an engineer off to study for 3 weeks in order to figure out how to do what I can do by pushing one button. That's extremely important to us because, again, it comes back to those great connectivity and networking experiences. And if you have to spend weeks or spend an hours going through user guides trying to figure out how to get a particular function to work, then in my mind, we as a company have failed in our products. And we do not want to fail. We want you to be successful. Next, please. So this is just an example of what I was talking about with that BeamFlex technology. I thought it would be good to have a little graph here to give you an idea of how this works, simply because it is something that plays so well. A lot of people will say, oh, isn't this the same as transmit beamforming, which is a standards-based technology that was introduced as part of the 802.11n standard, but it's very different. Transmit beamforming is typically run across omnidirectional antennas with an access point, and then it talks to a client that also understands how to do transmit beamforming. BeamFlex doesn't require anything on the client side. It doesn't have to support any particular standard, so much like smart roaming or the other things I talked about. It just has to be a client. That's all I'm asking it to be. Just be you, really, is what our AP says to a client, and I'll figure out the rest. I'll do the heavy lifting. And as you can see, what'll happen is we'll see a client out there, and we'll be listening on all of our antennas, and we'll go, oh, antennas 1, 5, and 7 really hear this client very strongly, so I'll use them to transmit any data back to that client. And because it's a directional antenna, my signal and my gain is going to be higher, which means that client can go further and still maintain that high signal. And that can have a real improvement and a real impact in client performance. And as you can see in the slide, it can be combined with standards like transmit beamforming as well, so that you can take BeamFlex gain and transmit beamforming gain and combine them to get an even better signal quality for those devices. Next, please. And there are a lot of other things that we've done when it comes to the engineering and the RF side of things. And I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but just wanted to give you a feel for what we're doing, because as I said, we view ourselves as a high performance company. I want you to get the best possible performance, but I don't want to make you work too hard to get it. So that's where that simplicity comes into it. And there's really only one way of doing that, and that's with some really, really clever engineering work. And that's where our R&D guys, our engineers, are just rock stars. They have decades. We probably have centuries worth of RF knowledge in our engineering department. And they spend all day thinking about how can I get a little more performance, a little more reliability out of what people already have, the tools that they already have, and in a simple to deploy manner. And that's where Ruckus really stands out with these kinds of RF innovations. Next, please. And another thing that I like to point out to people, because I do often talk with customers or partners like yourself, and they'll ask, well, are you certified? Because you talk about all these cool technologies you have. I mean, but how well do you interoperate with other devices, with specifically the devices in my network? And we spend a lot of time on interoperability. As a matter of fact, we spend a lot of time in the Wi-Fi Alliance testbed. As a matter of fact, we are the only Wi-Fi 6 AP in their testbed that they use to certify interoperability. So if you get a new Wi-Fi 6 device, maybe the newest Apple iPhone 11 or the 12, which are all Wi-Fi 6 devices, or maybe that newest Windows laptop that's running the Intel Wi-Fi 6 chipset, and you ask yourself, hey, how did they certify that? I can tell you how they certified it. They did it with the Ruckus R750, because that's the AP that is their go-to and everybody gets tested against. That's just one of those cool little things, little techie detail that I thought some of you might enjoy. Next, please. All right, we're up to a polling question. So if you were thinking and listening to what I just said, name 2 Ruckus RF innovations. It could be Wolf-Fi and Bark Alert. It could be SmartFlex and Green Shield. It could be BeamFlex and Channelfly, or it could be Wi-Fi 5 and Wi-Fi 6. I'll give you guys a moment to pick the one that you think is correct. And most people went for the BeamFlex. I'm kind of sad nobody went with WolfFi. I really thought I might get somebody on that one. But yes, absolutely. BeamFlex and Channelfly are two of the many RF innovations that Ruckus has puts into all of our hardware and our software. Okay, moving on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the controllers because it's not enough to just have a client connect to a network. You have to be able to monitor it and manage it and configure it too. So let's move on to the next slide here and just kind of take a little bit of a dive into that. One of the things I wanted to talk about here, and something that many of our customers use today, is the Ruckus Smart Zone, which, if you recall in the product slide that I had a while ago, is available as either an appliance or as a virtualized appliance. Excuse me. And you can configure this in a centralized distributed architecture. It's extremely flexible. It has the highest scalability that you are going to find out there. You could set up a smart zone environment with everything from one access point to clusters of 30,000 access points and almost 500,000 users. So that is the scalability I'm talking about. And each one of these deployments, whether it's that one AP, whether it's those 30,000 APs, they're going to get the same features, the same functionality. You can have it highly available if that is something that you need with that 3-to-1 clustering for high availability. And you also get, as I said, that not just wireless, but wired and wireless network management and control and visibility. And this is really where most of our customers will come to, is to the Smart Zone software. We do also have a cloud version as well, which is really based on our Smart Zone software too. The cloud, in a lot of ways, I mean, it has a few tweaks to it, but it is essentially a virtualized Smart Zone running in a public cloud. And to compare that, as on the extreme side, you would be comparing it, and really what I'm trying to show here is that there's all these different technologies depending on which product line you have. Whereas on the Smart Zone, all my access points pretty much can be managed by the Smart Zone. They're deployed in a similar manner. And there's really no looking at this and going, well, I've got this AP, so I have to be using this product line, and I want to do this thing here, but oh, it's not managed by that one, it's managed by this one. Take all that out. It's complicated, and let's just make it simple. Next slide, please. And also the other thing when we're talking about controllers here is that controller list, which is a bit of a misnomer, right? Because it's not like there's no controller, but the controller is not a separate appliance in this case. And for here, that means, as I had mentioned earlier, the access point itself is going to be the controller, and that software is offered for free, no additional charging, no additional licensing of anything when you're running an unleashed network. And you can run that with up to 128 APs on a network. You can have a bunch of ICX switches. You can have a little over 2,000 devices on a network like that. And you basically got your management, your monitoring, and your configuration for free. And if that's not flexible, I don't know what is. Contrast and compare that with some of the other things that Extreme offers, which are really, it's a very different kind of offering, is probably the best thing that I can say here. Next. And then I mentioned cloud, and yes, there is cloud too. And we offer one solution, which is actually rather different from the Extreme, which has a couple different variations on their cloud offering. We have one, which is Ruckus Cloud. And as I mentioned before, this is not a spin-off, it's not a different kind of technology. It is based on the Smart Zone technology, the virtual Smart Zone controller, and it offers pretty much everything that the Smart Zone offers, but it puts it into a little bit nicer, easier to use interface. Just makes it simpler for people who are really not trying to build some giant, huge, network like a Fortune 10 might have, for example. But we want to build something, give people all that power, all of that functionality, but put it in the hands of somebody who doesn't want to, using a previous analogy I made, who doesn't want to go study for 3 weeks in order to figure out how to turn the system on. And that, for us, is really our sweet spot. And I would contrast that, if you're looking at it from the Extreme side, on all these different licensing tiers, these different options. You know, which version are you at? I don't know. With Ruckus Cloud, there's really just the one thing, it's cloud. And if you're a managed service provider, you can offer our cloud as your cloud, if that's the way you like to roll. Next, please. And then the next thing I want to talk about here is analytics, because it is something that's really on everybody's mind. So next, we'll move on from here, because analytics is really where everybody is spending their time in the market. It's a very hot term, a lot of buzzwords around it, you know, machine learning, AI, and so on and so forth. And yes, Ruckus has analytics as well, along with that reporting tool I mentioned earlier, the Smart Cell Insight. And what do you get with this? So again, this is a cloud service. You can get it standalone. So for example, if you're a Smart Zone appliance customer, you could be pointing them towards the analytics cloud. If you're a Ruckus Cloud customer, you actually already get access to some of the insights from it. So that's also there too. So it gets bundled in. Again, just kind of making things simple, but giving you the power to manage, to monitor, to configure, and to troubleshoot your network, because we want to make it easy, not hard. That's the way networking should be. And as I had mentioned at the very beginning when I was talking about how you solve problems, the key thing about the analytics is the fact that it has all this stuff, all this expertise already set up in the system for you. So it knows how to mark and classify different issues by severity so that you can pay attention to the stuff that's most important, rather than looking through an event log of like 50 different things that maybe are really not that big a deal. Spend your time where it's most valuable. We have the AI-driven insights that can help you when you're looking at troubleshooting something and saying, hey, we think this is what's going on in your network, and this is what we recommend that you do to solve it. So all that gets brought together with this very deep data exploration tool. So if you really like getting in there and getting your hands dirty, so to speak, and diving in and looking at the data yourself, we've got the Data Explorer there for you too. It's all there, and it'll help make sure that you can meet and hopefully exceed your SLA commitments. Next, please. So we come down to, why do most people think Ruckus will win against Extreme? Why do I, as someone who used to be an SE out in the field, and I still talk to many, many customers and partners like yourself every day, what do they tell me are the reasons that we win? And it really comes down to that flexibility, that scalability, to the performance, the ease of use, and increasingly now, I am also seeing people talking about the IoT integration as a key technology that's helping them go out there and solve problems. And for partners like yourself, not only helping your customers solve a problem that maybe they didn't think could be solved, but also winning deals simply because you're offering something so differentiated and nobody else can touch it. Next slide, please. And that is where we come into play, and offering all these things that I've talked to you about, how we stack up against all of our competitors. When you look at the things that we offer, the controllers, the access points, the switches, the secure network access software and policy, that network intelligence and service assurance, IoT, private LTE for your in-building cellular, all these things combined give you a really strong toolbox that you can reach for when you're trying to solve a problem for your customer or even for yourself. So I really urge you, if you haven't seen Ruckus products and you're not familiar with us, if this is your first time hearing about us, please get in touch. We love to talk to you guys. It's always the highlight of my day when I get to chat with you guys. Next slide. So, you liked everything you heard? I hope so. You want more Ruckus? Next, please. Well, I have a place where you can find out lots more information. It's called the Ruckus Partner Portal. Next. And you can go there once you are a registered Ruckus partner. You'll be able to log in there, get access to all kinds of stuff, program details, training, partner central support for things like deal registration, renewals, competitive, a lot of the competitive material that I've shown you and a lot more, all of that content goes on there as well. It's a pretty cool place. And with that said, I believe I have my last slide here, and then I will be turning it over Oops, nope, I have one more slide beyond this, and then I'll be turning over to Doug. But yeah, I just wanted to finish on this last point here, which is, you know, there's so much going on. And if 2020 has taught us anything, it has taught us that this isn't about one person going out there and trying to be a hero and do everything on their own and be everything. That just doesn't happen, and it doesn't work anymore. People have a lot of challenges. They have a lot of problems they're trying to solve, and you can't have this one size fits all. What you can do, however, is you can have a one smart can help solve many. And that is where I think Ruckus comes into play and where we can be the best partner for you. Next. And that is my last slide. And thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. We have a final polling question here, which is, where can you find out more about Ruckus? You can find it on the CommScope Ruckus Partner Portal, partners.ruckuswireless.com. You can find it through Google, or maybe you are into the Oxford English Dictionary, as I am, or perhaps the Library of Congress. Have a guess. And most of you got it right. Well, actually, you know, Google isn't the worst choice either here. I'm going to have to give a nod to whoever was putting that one down. And that's it for me. So again, thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. And I think it's over to you now, Doug.
Okay, that sounds good. So thanks, Jeanette. That was awesome. Appreciate that. You guys, I was asked to step in. And first of all, my name is Doug Ellingsworth. I'm the distribution account manager for Ruckus, and Securematics is my wonderful partner. So wanted to just jump in. I understand that there might be some people new to Ruckus. So we just wanted to talk about the CommScope Partner Pro Network and the advantages of getting involved with it. So basically, becoming a CommScope Partner Pro Network is your entry to selling Ruckus products. And let me share with you why join the Partner Pro Network. First of all, it's an award-winning program. We've been recognized by CRN and others for it. It's 100% channel focus. It provides incentives and rewards, as well as the support that you guys might need. So let's talk about some of the benefits that you're going to get by joining. One of them, or the first one, is inclusion in the partner locator. So basically meaning, as people are out there, they're looking for partners, your name will be on our website. If you have a specialization, it will be recognized for that as well. So it's a great tool as far as to help support your business. Another area is a support associate. And by having this as well, I mean, it opens up a whole nother value that you can provide to your partners and a revenue stream for you as well. So let me talk about those two though. The partner locator and the support associate, both of those have a training compliance requirement. And I'm going to talk to you guys about that in just a minute as far as providing you more detail. But let me continue on with some of the benefits. We also have a demo equipment program, and right now for both wired and wireless products, we offer up to 77% off MSRP. Now you can use this for demos, you can use it for marketing or any type of testing facilities. It's your product. Another area, and this one might be important to many of you out there, is that the deal registration. You're eligible for that. This is discounted pricing to protect you for both pre-sales investment as well as provide you any type of competitive advantage as well. Another area that I wanted to talk to you about is in the ability to participate in our specializations. So we have areas that you can specialize in. That could be in cloud, it could be IoT, CBRS, some of the things that Jeanette was talking about in her presentation. You can go a step further. And again, there's some requirements, but there's also some benefits that come along with going through that specialization process. Being a Partner Pro Network member, you are eligible for that as well. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is about MDF. You know, as a solution provider, you have the ability to leverage funding to do marketing or training or some type of an event that you may want to leverage. So by doing this, you could participate as a solution member. You can request working with Securematics And what they will do is they will working with you, submit a business plan, and then we'll see about passing through MDF marketing funds. So solution provider is our entry level. We only have 2 levels. It's solution provider, and then it's elite solution provider. And with the elite one, there's more, it's more of a commitment based on, working together. With that, there's some things like some advantages as far as like a rebate, MDF funds that are dedicated to you, and then also a lead offering program. But do understand that there's with those advantages also comes some additional compliances around like training, and then also like having revenue goals, and usually do some type of business plan. You're working very closely with Ruckus at that point when you're an elite member. So I talked about the training, and let me just go to that real quick, and then I'll wrap it up. So in this, again, this information, I'm glad Jeanette showed this on the partner portal, but this information I'm sharing with you guys is all on the partner portal as well. But I just want to share, for an example, how easy it is to get this accreditation that I talked about a little bit earlier. And so if I'm looking at like the example for a solution provider, there is a sales and pre-sales training requirement. And this is, anybody can take this, and honestly, it's like 4 or 5 very short videos. I think total time is less than 30 minutes, and it's high level. It's primarily to help your salespeople understand who Ruckus is and how to position the product. After that, you have 4 classes that are required on the technical side. Those are wired pre-sales, wireless pre-sales, and then you have the wireless technical accreditation and a wire technical certification. And then they have one other one that's recommended, and that's a technical assessment. All those courses are done online, and they are, so the whole idea around this whole thing is not to burden you guys with all the requirements. And I've been in this industry a long time, and over the years, that was one of the biggest complaints, is that the time investment, the money investment to get involved just to sell some product. We think this is a pretty easy offering. And again, I go back to that award winning program, and that's part of the reason why. So what I would recommend that you guys do is, if this is what we shared with you today is of interest, I would come back to Robbie over at Securematics. I would schedule some time with him. Robbie would love to walk you through the partner portal, talk to you more about this whole program as far as becoming a partner pro network solution provider. And then also we can talk about like how to strategize and help with introductions within Ruckus, and kind of stay with you throughout the whole process. So that's about all that I wanted to share today. So for you guys that are selling Ruckus, I wanted to thank you very much, because I know this was a very challenging year. So I wanted to thank you for your commitment and loyalty. And then for you guys that are looking at us for the first time, I hope today really opened your eyes to taking a closer look at Ruckus. We are committed to partnering with you, and we'll do whatever we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Securematics, and thank you guys so much for not only being a great partner, but just being some wonderful people, and for all the value add that you provide our partners.
Thanks, Doug. All right, we're going to open it up for any Q&A. We still have the Securematics and Ruckus teams on the phone. So if you have any questions, pop them into the chat or the question box. Looks like we don't have any questions coming in yet, Robbie. So if you want to go ahead and wrap it up.
All right, well, just thanks everybody for joining us. And if you do end up with any questions, please feel free to reach out. You could get me directly at Robbie, ROBBY .Mattel, MATTEL @securematics.com. And other than that, we're just happy to work with you and really grow the business together. So whatever we can do to help that, just let us know, and we're here to help. So thanks again for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.